So here I'm going to be showing you a little bit of how to walk through the border play assignment in Illustrator. That is the program you'll want to use. I'm going to give you some tips on how to create borders and how to really work on this assignment. So to start, I want to create a new file. I'm going to go ahead and create a letter-sized file. And then we have this blank canvas. Now the first thing we need for this assignment is some kind of an icon or a logo that we can work with that will be the centerpiece of these borders. We can use anything you want. So you may have an existing logo or mark or icon of some kind that you want to use, but if you don't worry. You're welcome to use typography. So by getting the type tool and then creating a bounding box or a type box, I'm able to type words inside this box. So maybe you want to use your favorite letter or your initial, but maybe you want to actually look at the different fonts that are on this computer to try to pick something that's a little bit more representative of you or a little more interesting or something that you're more excited to work with. You can increase the size of the typography right here. Another option, if that doesn't do it for you, is you can come into what's called the Glyphs palette. I have it open here, but it's also under Type Glyphs. And this is a palette that shows us all kinds of letters and characters that are contained within fonts. A lot of them that we can't see or necessarily type with a keyboard. Maybe you want to look into these characters. Maybe one of these is something that would be interesting for you to work with on this assignment. If that doesn't satisfy you, you're also welcome to download or find some kind of an icon. A website that I like to use is called the Noun Project. It's a site that allows you to download icons that are very high quality for free. For a student assignment like this, you don't need to worry about the rights or who owns this piece. Although if you were using this professional, that is a consideration. You'll see some of that on this site. But for an assignment like this, feel free to download anything you're interested in working with and bringing it into this assignment. So once we have the actual icon or logo or piece of typography that we're going to use, we want to go ahead and start creating the borders. I'm going to go ahead and use this number symbol. Now, if you are using typography, it's important that you outline the type. This is going to make the typography actually a symbol. It's going to make it vector art. So what happens with that is it will no longer allow you to edit or add text to the type box. So that is the downside of outlining. However, it does allow you to modify the shape and use it more as a vector element within the file. So outlining is up here in the type menu, create outlines. It's also Shift Command O. It's a very, very handy shortcut that you will use quite a bit. And you'll notice that once I create those outlines, the bounding box shrinks. I start to see points around the type. So I can actually, technically modify this typography, although this is not part of this assignment. Please leave the type alone. But we have something that's nice to work with. It doesn't have a big box around it, and it's a vector element, which will be perfect for this. So now we really want to focus on those borders. Now there's a couple different ways to do this. The first and easiest way is to use the different shape tools. These are going to allow us to create shapes that we can use to contain around these items. You may draw your first shape and find that it's solid. You want to come down here to the color area, and you can either flip or dictate that you want this side to be black through your color palette. That'll allow you to start to see the strokes surrounding the actual shape. Then from there you can use this stroke palette to actually increase the scale of your stroke. This will change the size of these borders. You can also go ahead and come into your stroke palette. And one thing that's really awesome about that palette is it will allow you to do all kinds of other things in addition to changing the weight. So we can go here to show options, and suddenly we're able to make a dashed line. We're able to change the way that they actually terminate or cap. We can change the way the corners are represented. You can change the actual dashing, how frequent is it? How many gaps are there in these? So these are just useful things that allow you to modify what the line tool can really do. So something that would be fun to play with for you as you're building these different frames. You may also find that you want to use multiple frames to create one border. So one thing you can do there is you can actually use what's called the offset path tool. It's a very powerful tool for taking shapes and increasing them proportionately. So I'll show how that works here. I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle instead. So let's go ahead and draw an ellipse around this. You'll see that it keeps the very last styling that I had. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I don't want it to be dashed anymore. Then I'm going to go up here to Object, and I'm going to say Path, Offset Path. And we're given this dialog box that allows us to change this shape or dictate how much larger or smaller we want it to be. So if I click preview, you'll see that we actually see the larger frame surrounding it. And then if we change this number, it's actually changing how much it extends. You can actually even make this negative if for some reason you wanted it to actually get smaller instead of larger. So this is a really handy tool for you as you're building these frames, and maybe you want to build concentric circles or concentric squares to build more complex frame structures. So one other thing you might want to try to do is you could also play with copying and pasting. So by taking this frame and copying it back on top of itself, so that's with the Command C for copy, and then paste in front, which is Command F. That's going to paste the object directly on top of the object that's already there. You can actually layer some of these. So maybe here we want to make an inline or a white shape. So let's change our color here to white instead of black and reduce the stroke. And you'll see that it begins to have the effect that there's actually two lines, even though we're just using a white line to split a larger black line. Another useful thing you can do is by holding down the Shift and Option key, you can actually expand or contract these shapes from the middle. This is a handy tool, but you'll notice that with things like ovals, it won't always do it proportionately, and that's because that's not how this is meant to work. You'll see that right here the bottom portions are thicker than the sides, so that's a place where you would want to use the offset path to mitigate that, unless that was the effect you were looking for. But if you're working with perfect circles or perfect squares, those won't be an issue. The other thing you might want to try to do is actually create a border or a frame from actual shapes. This is a little trickier and more advanced, but something that I think is useful to know. I'm going to show how it works with a circle. So I'm going to go ahead and create a circle. Let's go ahead and make the stroke black. So I'm going to double click here just so that I can see it. And this circle is really just going to be used as a guide. It will not be a part of my final frame that I'm going to create. And maybe I want to create a frame that is made up of interlocking pentagons. So I'm going to go ahead and make this shape. I'm going to reduce the stroke to 1, and I'm going to make sure it goes back to having hard edges. Alright. So I'm going to rest this shape right on the top of this circle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rotate tool mixed with the duplicate tool to duplicate this shape and create an actual frame. So I'm going to use this circle, I'm going to click on it to see where the center is. And once I find this center, I'm going to go ahead and press Command R, which is going to turn on the rulers. So there it is in the menu, but it's Apple R or Command R. So those turn on. That's going to allow me to pull guides. Guides are handy and useful for lining things up or knowing where things go. Well, I want to know where the center of this circle is. That's going to be important to me. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these guides over right into the center. Get as close as you can. You might even want to zoom in. Alright, so that's pretty close to where that center is. So I'm going to select this shape and go to this rotate tool. Now I want it to rotate from the center of this circle. That's something you can dictate. You'll notice that right now it's rotating from right here, but I don't want to rotate the shape itself. I want to rotate the shape actually around this bigger circle. So I'm going to line it up right on where those guides match, and I'm going to hold down the Option key as I click. And this will bring up this rotate menu, very similar to some of the menus you've been looking at with the other shapes. And then what I want to do is I want to think about how many of these shapes do I think I want? Because this is going to just be a simple equation where I'm going to type in 360 degrees, which is the value or the number of degrees around a circle, right? And then I'm going to divide that by how many times I want the shape to repeat. So I'm going to go ahead and say, how about 50 times? I'm going to click copy. This is really important. I don't want to click OK. I want to click copy because I want another one of these shapes. And you'll see that when I click copy, it moves it just enough. Well, now the handy thing here is if I come in and use the duplicate tool, it will continue that same exact movement and duplication over and over. So the duplicate is Command D. So I'm just going to click Command D as this shape continues to rotate around until it gets all the way around and completes the shape. And the handy thing is since we went in and dictated that it's 360 divided by 50, I know that it's going to work out perfectly at the end. It's going to seam together and create a perfect border. Now I can delete this interior shape if I want, and I have this interesting frame that I just created. So again, this is a little bit more of an advanced feature, but it's definitely something I would like you to play with during this assignment. Play with other shapes, play with layering and mixing these different combinations, because I think you'll find that you can get a lot more creative results if you really play with these tools and see what they're capable of. I hope you enjoyed the assignment, and as always, if you have questions, please make sure to email your instructor.